everyone, welcome back to another hardware news recap of the week. In this one, Intel CEO Pat Gelsinger steps down, / resigns, /
Papa's here.
In other news, MSI has a new Claw coming out, and it has a listing on Amazon. We're going to try and get it in for review. Different look to it, and we'll be talking about that. Additionally, Intel Arc officially appears on the Steam hardware survey. Inwin has launched that robotic case called the Infinite that we saw at Computex, and it's $7,000. And moving on, the RX 8800 gets rumors. Let's get into it. Before that, this video is brought to you by the Antec C8 cases. We reviewed the Antec C8 ARGB a few months ago and found it to be an overall competitive performer using unique 160mm fans. There's also a version without included fans, and it's competitively priced while still offering attention to detail key elements like the airflow partition for better directing air intake. It also has high-quality kill management grommets and limited obstructions for bottom air intake. The ARGB variant includes all these features, but also two 160mm reverse blade fans and one 140mm fan. Learn more at the link in the description below. Up first, Intel has announced the departure of its engineer turned CEO, Pat Gelsinger. We'll come back to Gelsinger in a moment. He is stepping down and retiring, they say. But for the new leaders, Intel has appointed two, so they have co-CEOs. These are David Zinsner and Michelle Johnston Holthouse, both of whom have finance, sales, and marketing backgrounds at the company. And if you don't know who Zinsner is, we didn't either. We did some basic research. We'll have that just for the background for you. And if you don't know who Holthouse is...
Thanks, Steve.
What have I done? All right, so we're not going to get samples. Well, Intel, it was nice working with you all. I understand. Maybe next time. Aside from hyper-localized fame to the Gamers Nexus meme audience, Intel noted this about Holthouse's qualifications. Quote, Holthouse is a proven general manager and leader who began her career with Intel nearly 3 decades ago. Prior to being named CEO of Intel Products, which is the new title that she holds, she was executive vice president and general manager of CCG. Holthouse has held a variety of management and leadership roles at Intel, including Chief Revenue Officer and General Manager of the Sales and Marketing Group and lead of global CCG sales. Holthouse's LinkedIn profile notes the prior title was Executive VP and General Manager of the Client Computing Group, which is the group that launches most of the products we cover at GM. Holthouse's profile also notes starting at Intel in 2003 as a director of marketing in the reseller product division, noting leading teams for market forecasts and analytics. In 2005 to 2007, she became a general manager and notes, quote, defining and developing motherboard and desktop CPU roadmaps. Through 2012, she was the GM of the Mobile Products Group, noting leading the engineering and marketing teams. Rapidly recounting the other jobs, she was VP of Sales and Marketing in 2013 to 2017, Corporate VP and GM of Sales and Marketing, then SVP of Sales and Marketing and Acting CMO, and then Executive Vice President and Chief Sales Officer. As for Intel's other new, at least interim, leader, Zinsner, Intel wrote this, quote, Zinsner has more than 25 years of financial and operating experience in semiconductors, manufacturing, and the technology industry. He joined Intel in January 2022 from Micron Technology, where he was Executive Vice President and CFO. Zinsner served in a variety of other leadership roles earlier in his career, including President and Chief Operating Officer at Affirmed Networks and Senior Vice President of Finance and CFO at Analog Devices. Zinsner's past spans more companies. The LinkedIn profile starts with Mellon Bank as an analyst in the early 90s, went on to Harris Corporation in 1996 to 1999, which we thought looked like the L3 Harris logo, but weren't sure until we saw this line of its products, realizing that this Harris merged with L3 later. He worked as an analyst and manager prior to the merger. More recently, Zinsner worked as CFO at Intersil, years prior to the acquisition by the Renesas chips, which you may know from Mossfets, and then at Analog Devices at CFO, Affirmed Networks prior to its Microsoft acquisition, and perhaps most notably again, Micron 2018 to 2022. Intel's previous CEOs during GN's sort of existence and awareness of those CEOs have included Bob Swan, who went from interim CEO to CEO from 2018 to 2021. So at least according to this post, they have promoted interim CEOs to just CEOs in the past. And Bob Swan also had a finance background, as we understand it. Brian Krzanich was before him, went from COO to CEO. And then Paul Ottolini, who appears to have had a mix of management background over the architecture group and sales and marketing background. It's interesting working this job longer because we're getting to the stage now where I can remember covering certain key people arriving or departing. And Gelsinger, I distinctly remember his return to Intel marking a lot of hope for the company, following effectively two sort of MBA-type leaders who helmed Intel during some of its worst times of stagnation. So Gelsinger really marked a period of hope. Gelsinger also has an engineering background and was a major change from Intel's lineup of accountants and MBAs and finance people and salespeople before him, with Krzanich leading during Intel's greatest period of stagnation. Gelsinger heralded a return to engineering focus and is a noted and accomplished engineer. According to Wikipedia, he worked as CTO rather than some of these CFO-type positions from 2001 to 2009. Gelsinger began work at Intel at 18 years old and was the lead architect of the 486. Wikipedia also notes that he led, quote, key technology developments, including Wi-Fi, USB, Intel Core, and Intel Xeon processors, end quote, and Gelsinger's engineering work is respectable. Like any leader of a major company like this, Gelsinger also had a number of gaffes. Long before he became Intel CEO in 2008, he publicly called NVIDIA's CUDA, quote, an interesting footnote in the history of computing annals. In June of 2022, Gelsinger stated this:
AMD in the rearview mirror. And
Intel has gotten stomped since that statement. Alder Lake did well, but after that, Intel has struggled. More recently, Reuters reported that Gelsinger's comments on TSMC cost Intel a reported 40% discount on its wafers, which came at a time when Intel had to fold plans to self-fabricate some of its newer pieces of its products. So Gelsinger was an interesting leader for Intel, where, like any position of leadership, it's likely that the full effects of his tenure won't be known for years to come. Likewise, he was leading a ship that had been on a particularly bad course before his arrival, and Intel has had a number of major setbacks and gaffes under his leadership as well. So how much of Intel's current positioning is directly attributable to his leadership versus knock-on effects from the past, and how much we can read into his future impact on the company, there's really no way to know what the latent impact will be, if it'll be positive or negative. But either way, Intel wrote this on its blog post, quote, Intel Corporation today announced that CEO Pat Gelsinger retired from the company after a distinguished 40-plus year career and has stepped down effective December 1st. The board has formed a search committee and will work diligently and expeditiously to find a permanent successor to Gelsinger. The way they wrote that sounds like Intel's going to like the Arctic with the search and rescue team or something. As a parting message and as part of Intel's post, Gelsinger wrote this, quote, leading Intel has been the honor of my lifetime. Today is of course bittersweet, as this company has been my life for the bulk of my working career. I can look back with pride at all that we have accomplished together. It has been a challenging year for all of us as we have made tough but necessary decisions to position Intel for the current market dynamics, end quote. Intel didn't say much else in the rest of its post. As one of the final acts before departure, whether attributable to him or not, after previously getting rid of free bananas and coffee, Intel brought back coffee for employees. Now, we like to think this was the final nail in the coffin for the board of directors. It was an act of defiance from Pat Gelsinger, who issued an executive order and said free coffee will be returning to the workplace, as he packed his cubicle and prepared to depart, leaving nothing but the wreckage of a coffee-laden environment behind him. For years to come, Intel's board of directors will bemoan these decisions. And one last time, as he walked out the door, the board of directors had to hear,
so kids, Papa's here.
Had to use it at least one more time. I'm sure we'll find places to use it in the future, but I am sad that it will be less relevant now, although there will be more relevance for...
Thanks, Steve.
As for our opinion commentary, so at GN, we're not a business journal. We don't claim to know what makes the best CEO or anything like that. So this is me speaking from observations. Engineer leaders have been certainly proven capable in a lot of these technology-driven companies, where you look at Boeing as an example in the past, right? And Intel in the past, AMD and NVIDIA currently have pretty engineering-minded CEOs. Finance, accounting, and MBA executives definitely have their place, especially if they can build a team of strong technical people around them in CTO-type positions. As for what makes a good CEO, just observing the companies in our space, it does seem like there is at least a correlation of a stronger product portfolio when there's sort of an engineering mindset at the helm. And maybe that's an engineer who became a manager and hasn't been an engineer in 20 years or whatever, but it does seem to correlate. So Gelsinger stepped down follows Intel receiving most of its grant for the US funding from the CHIPS Act. So that was one final sort of major positive for them coming through at the end of his term at Intel. And otherwise, we'll let you know when they appoint a new CEO or if they turn either of these current co-CEOs into a permanent one. It's interesting to see Intel currently under the helm of more of the sort of finance, MBA, accounting types, marketing types. Maybe they're looking at it like, well, the engineer thing, we tried it, didn't work out. But again, it's going to be really hard to know how much impact is a latent effect from the prior CEOs versus how much of Gelsinger's impact will be latent. And either way, what no one can argue is that Intel has been in an absolutely terrible position for a while now, and has been in pretty dire straits in some ways, especially with its product portfolio for the world we cover for CPUs. So that is inarguable. Maybe they're looking for a way to boost investor confidence or something, because at least at the time of the announcement, Intel stock shot up a little bit. So up next, Reuters has posted a news story about an Intel securities filing relating to its manufacturing division. Reuters has previously broken a number of stories that proved to be accurate for the CHIPS Act relating to Intel. This, however, is just a straight-up securities filing. So Reuters wrote this, quote, in a securities filing, Intel said on Wednesday the subsidies require it to own at least 50.1% of Intel Foundry if the unit is separated into a new privately held legal entity. If Intel Foundry becomes a public company and Intel itself is not the largest shareholder, the company could sell only 35% of Intel Foundry to any single shareholder before running into change in control provisions, end quote. Intel currently has nearly $100 billion worth of active projects, including the Fab 52 construction site that we visited in Arizona, dubbed Project Eagle. When we visited Fab 52 and the existing Fab 42 last year, the construction site was within its 3 to 5 year period for completion, which would put it in the 2025 to 2026 range from the start date prior to our visit. We're not sure if that time has moved since, but the company has paused other fab projects, including delaying its Germany fabrication plant, as reported in September in Euronews, which quoted the Deutsche Presseagentur as writing, quote, it was an investment estimated at around 30 billion euros, and last year, the German government promised state aid worth 9.9 billion euros for the settlement, end quote. The same publication quoted then CEO Gelsinger as stating, quote, we will pause our projects in Poland and Germany by approximately 2 years based on anticipated market demand, end quote. The US projects have mostly continued to move forward, although have faced some delays. In November, published via Tom's Hardware, Gelsinger stated, quote, we are disappointed by the time it is taking to get CHIPS funding done. It's well over 2 years since the CHIPS Act passed, and over that period, I've invested $30 billion in U.S. manufacturing, and we've seen $0 from CHIPS grants, end quote. Intel has since received a reported $8 billion or so in funding, with $500 million reportedly removed or postponed by the U.S. government following its own concerns. All of that said, Intel some years ago announced its IFS efforts, or its Intel Foundry Services, and IFS has been positioned as sort of this separate unit in some ways. It's still part of Intel, but where they're trying to collect customers outside of Intel's own product team. Intel's product team historically has made use of Intel's fabs. Now that has changed recently as they're starting to use TSMC for parts that they weren't able to make in their own fabs. But Intel's goal is to start doing more contract manufacturing than it's done previously and pick it up through IFS. So there's been some discussion over the past couple of years now. You'll occasionally see a story pop up in the news about could Intel sell off one division or the other. And so that's why this story has come up now, where with the subsidies, it sounds like the U.S. government is sort of imposing some requirements as to the ownership and control of those fabs, which I guess makes sense. So it looks like the U.S. is ensuring it retains some level of U.S.-based ownership of the fabs. And this is also something that fabrication plants are just a major national security interest for every country that has them right now, where it's like a new, any new resource that you, I don't know, oil or something that you want in your region in the event you need it. So that's how they're being looked at now. And it looks like the US is trying to guarantee some confidence over their own chip supply. So anyway, we don't comment on the politics of it, but that's kind of what it looks like from our point of view here. Up next, Intel contacted us to let us know that MSI's new Claw handheld with the Ultra series of CPUs is now coming out. It's been listed on Amazon. So this features a couple different SKUs. One of them is the Ultra 7 258V CPU, and MSI's original Claw was somewhat isolated. We reviewed that one because it was one of the very few that went with Intel, where pretty much everyone else for the handhelds was and kind of still is going with AMD solutions instead. So it stuck out for that reason. We had a lot of trouble with the Claw for many reasons, MSI through Intel, but this new one is sticking with Intel as well. And from what we've heard, it sounds like it should be more competitive in mobile this time, but we'll find out when we get it. So the new Claw handheld has two colorways, one with sort of champagne colored grips, LED face buttons, and RGB thumbsticks. The other is black and retains the face button and thumbstick styling, just changed the color of the shell. The Amazon listing shows three models of the silicon, the Ultra 5 135H, Ultra 7 155H, and Ultra 7 258V. And as far as these models go, the 135H and 155H are existing, with the 258V being the new one. Somehow these are names that made sense to somebody at some point. There are two more sub-SKUs at 500 gigabytes and 1 terabyte drive size, with another set of two for 32 gigabytes or 16 gigabyte options for memory. So a lot of combinations here. MSI is retaining a familiar styling for the Claw's shell. The rear of the device has a central badge flanked by what appear to be two large vents that serve as the cooling solution or part of it. There are two rear-mounted buttons labeled M1 and M2. MSI also has an arrow pointed toward the bottom left where we find two openings. At the time we're writing this, there's no material defining what that arrow is pointing towards. If you've seen something out there, let us know. But looks like it might be a feature to maybe make it easier to open, but we're not sure. The Amazon listing defines an 8-inch 1080p 120Hz display as the solution. Now, we had a lot of problems with the original Claw. Again, those come from MSI's side and Intel's alike. The platform stability was a concern at the time. The gaming performance was just overall not competitive. And this new one, running on newer silicon, could shake things up. We've heard some good things about Intel's ability to compete in mobile lately. We don't test laptops, generally speaking, so we haven't worked on any of the newer mobile silicon, but we'll get to work on it as soon as we have one of these in, and we'll pick our handheld reviews back up for that. Up next, as Intel ramps to get Battlemage out the door, there's some Alchemist stuff coming across the line. So Alchemist has appeared on the Steam hardware survey, or more specifically, Video Cards spotted a tweet that spotted the Steam hardware survey reported that Alchemist has arrived on the hardware survey via the tweet via Video Cards, now via us. Going all the way to the source, which is the Steam hardware survey, and bypassing everything else, the survey lists NVIDIA's 3060 as the most popular card at 5% share in November. Ignoring the mobile silicon, the next GPU is the 4060, and in fact, including the mobile silicon, the first 12 devices are all NVIDIA, with a generic AMD device below that, two more NVIDIA devices, including the ancient 1050 Ti, and then an Intel Iris device. Ignoring all of this and running a Control F for ARC, we land on Intel Arc Graphics just above the cutoff at 0.19% share. It first appeared last cycle at 0.18%. The Arc Graphics listing is above the 6750 GRE, the 5500 XT, and the 7700 XT. We're not sure how encompassing Arc Graphics is in this listing. That could include things like laptop solutions as well, but it's at least an appearance for Intel's graphics on the Steam hardware survey with Arc. So, and then we'll be hearing about Battlemage soon. Up next, the Inwin Infinite chassis, if you can call it a chassis still, is one of the signature series cases from Inwin. We covered it before. We actually had an interview with some of the designers when we saw it at Computex, and it is an impressive case, but it is now for sale for $7,100 US. This is part of what Inwin calls its signature series, and they are genuinely really cool concept cases, but we think they should rename it from signature to something more fitting, like maybe the Yacht series. Actually, coincidentally, Lian Li probably has some sort of patent on that. Anyway, the chassis has a massive sheet of 180-degree curved glass that wraps around an opposing aluminum sheet, which hosts the interior chassis and frame. These connect to a motorized solution that allows the case to open and close. Tom's Hardware spotted the case for sale, which launched with a new product unveil trailer on Inwin's channel, We checked out Inwin's website, which lists the Infinite case for sale, though the US store doesn't have it at this time. The EU store, however, lists the case for 6,776 euros, or again, 7,100 USD. That's obviously completely unobtainable, but it was a cool case. Maybe not $7,000 cool, but it's pretty cool. Inwin, however, says the shipping weight is in excess of 100 kilograms, so you might need to receive it with a lift gate. And the 100 kilograms here is also not surprising. And if you want pounds, this is a Wendy's. Next up, a published report from Video Cards reported on a WCCF Tech report of a chip hell leak that reported on an 8800 XT from John Dong Hao, a leaker recognizable by avatar alone, posting the following, quote, AIB, or add-in board partner, officially started mass production in mid-December, end quote. The post also claims a 25% reduction in power against the 7900 XTX and claims an uplift in ray tracing performance up to 45%. The post writes that, quote, it is said that raster ray tracing is basically 4080 Super, end quote. Now, AMD recently, in the last couple months sometime, has said that it's not really focusing on the high end this time. It's going after the more mass market. So this may be the top of the stack, but obviously we don't know yet. Current rumors indicate an NVIDIA launch for Q1 2025 that's looking pretty nailed down. There were reports recently indicating January, which would be after CES, where they have a keynote. There are also rumors about Intel launching this month for Battlemage, with potentially more cards to follow in January. And then on the AMD side, there's been rumors of the 9950 X2D and 9900 X2D, Threadripper Zen 5, and the new, whatever they call them, RX 8000 will go with GPUs. So, and that's all rumored for Q1 for AMD. So that's kind of the lineup on that. Up next. All right, Starforge Systems has some news. They have a RuneScape-themed PC. It's an old school RuneScape pre-built. I had to bring this one up because my gateway to EverQuest and MMORPGs in general was RuneScape a very long time ago. So I mostly played the RuneScape Classic, I think they call it now, the 2D one. I played a little bit of what's known as old school RuneScape now, but to me, I think it was known as RuneScape 2 at the time. Anyway, point is, they're changing the name so much, they should probably consult with NZXT. Either way, we'll use the naming from today if I can get it right. So, this is a pre-built PC with a custom skin on it for old school RuneScape. We've covered these types of PCs with Starforge before, namely the low-key that we reviewed previously. The RuneScape system includes an R5 7600X and a 7800 XT. That 7600X is a little bit low spec, but for something at least that's custom, but we guess they're looking to try and keep it maybe somewhat affordable. The parts at $2,035 indicate some markup for the paint job. The low key at the time it was sold, for reference, was about $500 to $650 extra over parts at the time, depending on where you bought them. But let's take a look at how they styled it. The case is a Lianli 011D Evo RGB with a Starforge plate light, as they call it, mounted where the side intake would be if you were to use it. Starforge ships with fans mounted in the top and bottom. The case has a wise old man plate light with the rear side panel finished with the old school RuneScape, or RS2 as I knew it, menu scene with an archer, mage, and warrior. The front is finished with more RuneScape art, finally with what appears to be a decorated top filter and a decal on the glass. We'd like to see interesting stuff like this in the PC industry, even at the premium, just because it's kind of cool to talk about something a little different. Same reason the Inwin thing was in here, although the user base for that would be even smaller. But you can still appreciate the design. This next story is pretty fun. Wanted to run just something that was fun and lighthearted for the end of the news roundup. So this is a Lego set. Take a look at it. This is from ASML. It at least was an officially sold thing on their retail page. And it is of the TWINSCAN EXE 5000. If you don't know what ASML is, it's a large equipment manufacturer that supplies fabs. The machine they're selling as Legos resembles one in our fab tour. You can take a look at this machine from our tour and then this Lego set, and you can see some resemblance there. I think it might be a different model though. The Lego set was priced at $228 and uses what ASML says are, quote, original Lego parts. They say it has 851 pieces. It assembles to 13.86 by 3.9 by 2.52 inches. And if you want millimeters, this is a Wendy's. I'm just kidding, we'll put it on the screen for you. Anyway, the replica of the TWINSCAN machine, which can be found in fabs everywhere, is pretty cool as a Lego set. The TWINSCAN EXE 5000 is described by ASML as a, quote, dual-stage extreme ultraviolet lithography system that will, quote, provide 8nm resolution to support advanced logic and memory chip production, end quote. ASML says this of its Lego set. Rick Lenson from D&E, designer of the Lego ASML Skyline and Lego TWINSCAN NXE 3400C is a previous one they did, has delivered another masterpiece in technology, once again made entirely of Lego, the TWINSCAN EXE 5000, end quote. Unfortunately, the page appears to resolve to a 404 at the time we're writing and filming this. We tried to buy one, but it was just gone, or appeared to be. We had to use archive.org to fetch the old address. We're not sure if ASML ran into any trouble with Lego or if it just simply ran out of stock or whatever, but we hope it comes back because it is a perfectly nerdy dust collector. And it is precisely something that I would like on a video set. So pretty cool stuff, definitely a more fun story. And as for the Lego version of the TWINSCAN, I don't think it has the EUV capabilities, but if it did, just think of the possibilities for the Lego universe. I mean, now they have silicon manufacturing. This is crazy. That's it for this episode. Thanks everyone for watching. As always, you can subscribe for more. Go to store.gamersnexus.net to help us out directly. We've still got that code PUCKGamersNexus for 10% off, active on the store. You can use it at checkout. And we've got more news coming up. So check back for that probably tomorrow or yesterday. It depends on when this video goes live. See you all next time.